The day after Labor Day 2017, the United States Attorney General announced the administration would be rescinding the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA for short. This change of national policy puts the lives of roughly 800,000 residents at risk of losing their homes and being deported to countries they hardly know. Our guest in the studio today is DACA student Kevin Vazquez, who is here to share his personal story. Kevin, thank you for your courage and thank you for coming to Feel Like You Belong.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, Alan. Really appreciate it.
You bet. So at what age did you come to the United States?
First, I originally arrived when I was 8 years old.
8 years old?
Not really aware what was going on, honestly. I was still just barely in elementary school.
And we're maybe even back to age 5, 6, we have zero memories because we're just little kids, you know, following our parents around.
Right. Just honestly thinking about Mexico, I barely remember it. Most of my memories are just of my family.
Sure.
But as far as scenery, towns, cities, it's not definitely all there.
Sure. So talk about those early years, because anytime any of us moves to a different culture, different language, there are some struggles. How was that for you in the early years? You remember those?
Yeah, absolutely. There was plenty of struggles. First of all, it was hard adapting to a new environment. I didn't even know any English, and coming into the country, there wasn't a big Hispanic Latino population in Grand Rapids. So we were one of the very few Hispanic families in our elementary school.
Okay.
So it made us stick out, and a lot of kids were really not very welcoming towards that idea, if I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
And that was immediately the environment that I was introduced to.
And in general, kids can be a little mean.
Of course.
To the fat kid, the foreign kid, the kid with the lisp.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, I had the thickest accent when I was first here.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you are how old now?
I'm 27 years old.
27. So you came, do the math, 19 years ago.
When I was 8. Yep, just about 19 years ago.
Okay. So you have spent 50-75% of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, it's about 66% of your life here. So the question that a lot of our guests sort of talk about, wrestle with, is how Latino do you feel in your heart, in your way of being, culturally, linguistically? How U.S. American do you feel?
So my roots, my culture, my heritage, the way I was raised, that's where my Latino and Hispanic side comes from. But I feel American when it comes to representing a country, because this is my home, you know, and I want to do everything I can to represent it in the best way possible onto others, not just those who live here, but those who live outside of the country. So yeah, when it comes to feeling anything else, I definitely like to consider myself Mexican American. Okay.
And so I know that a lot of immigrants from Latin America, not just Mexico, but Central America, South America, are big soccer fans. Are you a soccer fan?
Oh, when it comes to the World Cup, I'm glued to the TV.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
That was anything else besides that, not as much. But World Cup, I'm there.
Okay. Because, you know, at some point, you know, American football, baseball does come in, but so on the soccer divide, you're
definitely
there.
leaning more soccer.
Yeah. So when did you start? When did it start to feel like, yeah, you fit in, like, yeah, this is home, this is not a struggle?
Right. So growing up, things were a little rough, but eventually I met other students who were under not the same circumstances, but different. Some of my first friends were African American, other Latinos, and then eventually I started to feel like I was belonging, but I always knew something was off. And I didn't really realize the circumstances I was under until I was 16. And it wasn't until I was 16 I was trying to acquire a license.
Driver's license.
Driver's license,
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I saw my friends getting their cars.
They're driving.
I was like, this is the
coolest
coolest thing. Yeah,
drive,
I definitely want to, you know, I want that.
On the road.
Yeah, so, yeah, but the minute I tried getting a driver's license, I wasn't allowed to. I walked into the Secretary of State and they told me my Social Security wasn't valid. And I was really dumbfounded by that because I didn't even know what was going on. And that's when I had to go home and had to talk, you know, with the parents. And that's when I realized really
how did that get explained?
I didn't understand it for the longest time. I was just like, what?
But because for the previous 8 years,
Yeah.
I'm here. I am.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Going to school. All my
yeah.
friends are doing this. It's time to get a license.
Yeah,
no,
of course.
No, you can't.
No, they were just like, no, you're not part of us. You're not part of this country, type deal. That's the immediate reaction that I got. And
How
then,
did that sit with you? I mean, confusing maybe, but I could feel a sense of like hurt or estrangement.
yeah, you know, because things were rough moving first, but then I loved it. You know, I loved everything the United States had to offer, and it just got to a point where, driver's license was just the first step. You know, next thing you know comes graduation. And I just saw all these opportunities, and that's when I started realizing how much of these opportunities I'm not going to be able to have. And I didn't understand it really because I saw my parents work their back, like just give everything they had just to put a roof over our heads. You know, my dad came to the U.S. when he was 22 with 3 kids. I couldn't even imagine doing that right now, and I'm 27, let alone learning a new language, having no connections, new resources to get. And yeah, so I didn't understand what didn't make us part of the United States. If we were willing to do everything we could to be nothing but good and valuable citizens. So that's when I really started to understand the circumstances I was under.
And you're living in your neighborhood. You're paying taxes. You're
Of course.
keeping your house clean. You're
Checking all the boxes, you know, just being as good as we could. Yeah. And then it wasn't until high school that I graduated that I wanted to go to college. See, I thought driver's license was the first bump in the road, but man, I was wrong.
So you were a good student.
Yeah, I wanted to go to university. You know, I didn't have a big one in mind, but I just knew that my parents didn't sacrifice everything just so I could not go to college, and that was just the goal for me. And it wasn't until I tried applying that I received a letter and also a word from my counselor that I wasn't going to receive any federal aid or financial aid, no loans, period. And that also didn't make any sense to me because at the time I was working and I've been paying taxes too for like the last 2 years, and so have my parents. I know that's a big misconception when it comes to being undocumented, but I can promise you.
You're contributing to the system.
Exactly.
You're not leeches on
No,
the system.
absolutely not. No, there's security for that, and it's well used. I can't just go and tap into the system and take advantage of it at all.
Sure.
So yeah, after that, I realized that I had to pay for school out of pocket, and if I really wanted to do this, I was gonna have to give it everything I got. And it actually took me 8 years to get through community college because I was paying everything out of pocket.
Wow.
And then but midway through it, DACA came out, and that was just a breath of fresh air.
So talk about, because I think that this is a concept that most of our viewers just can't identify with. They have no idea. But all right, age 16, like, you sort of don't belong here, and then like it's calling your belonging in question, and also sort of your legality, and people often call that living in the shadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the psychology and what's the practicality of that day to day for, you know, somebody like you, you know, your family members, maybe some of your other friends?
Yeah, let's go between 2009 when I graduated high school and 2013. No DACA, no nothing.
So that's 4-year period.
4-year period, right? Okay. At the time I moved out, I wanted to, just like any other young adult, want to establish your own future.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
I get that the circumstances that I live under, but I want to have my own future and take personal responsibility for it. So I moved out, and that's when things got rough too. I tried getting jobs at retail stores or good jobs, but Social Security just wouldn't go through. But ironically, I was able to find factory jobs, construction jobs, restaurant jobs. So that's when I really started to see I was exactly where they needed me to be. And that's when you start feeling...
So just to clarify, there are some industries nationwide that, I don't know if saying taking advantage, but they are hiring, workers, especially your age, without documentation.
Right.
Because frankly, they need employees.
Right, who's going to run those jobs? And even then, even when I had that job, came tax time, I still had a valid VIN ID, almost like a VIN ID, and then you just plug in that number, able to pay taxes, and you're good to go.
So your paycheck, we had like Social Security, everything came out.
Yep. And
FICA.
And I started to see it. I was like, well, it's kind of a win-win. We contribute to the community and our surroundings, but we can never get any federal aid, federal help, nothing. I couldn't even get Medicaid or any insurance.
The payments were all one way.
One way and one way only. It was a win-win. And that was okay. But all I wanted.
Well, win-win for the system, but not for individuals like you.
And it was fine. Honestly, I get it. But all I wanted was to at least get an education. And that's when it started affecting me. I was just like, no matter how hard I pushed, I always found myself in this vicious cycle. Work 30 hours to pay for school, to go part-time, but then it's just this vicious cycle of, it just took a long time.
And so President Obama's first year in office was the beginning of 2009. I think one misunderstanding is that he eased up on deportations, and actually during his administration, a lot of those were increased.
He did not. That was pretty much the bargain. With pushing DACA, deportation increased. It was almost like a filter system.
Okay.
Because to get DACA, and it's funny because I find it ironic that a lot of people either call us criminals or terrorists or things along those lines, but you got to go through an extremely extensive background check with 0 to no misdemeanors. And after that background check, if you pass, then you're able to apply for DACA. But if you do not pass, then you are pretty much putting yourself at risk for deportation. So it's a risk for anybody that took it, and those who were willing to do it were able to receive DACA.
So we're talking about the practical side with jobs, but let's look at the psychological side. What is that? Because I truly, I can't imagine. Like, you're just looking over your shoulder. Like, is this white Suburban going to roll up in my driveway?
The hardest part was, so I still wanted to make a living, so I still drove around, right? And that was nerve-wracking.
Without a driver's license?
Yeah, that was really nerve-wracking. I had insurance, though. I had insurance. That was the funny part.
They'll sell you insurance,
without a license.
Oh, my, well... So the insurance people are fine with taking your money.
Of course, yeah. So I had insurance, didn't have a license, and that was by far the most nerve-wracking because I knew the minute I got pulled over, straight to jail. And after jail, they won't even bother a trial; it goes straight to a detention center. So I had so many heart attacks, I can't even begin to describe them. Because every day felt like your last day the minute you stepped into that car. So
you're like setting your cruise control at 25.
Oh yeah, you are.
Oh, school zone 25.
You are just take complete, because you're gonna say goodbye to your family, And if you have the luxury, you'll say goodbye to them in person. But if anything goes wrong, that's that. And I just couldn't imagine, just leaving without nothing. But at the same time, still had to make a living, and I still want a future. And a bus route. Honestly, if Lyft or Uber were back in the day, that would have been completely different. But it wasn't. So bus route, taxis, they just weren't as reliable when it comes to the job because no excuses. If you're late, you're late.
Sure.
So I just saw the car as the most realistic thing to do. So yeah, living under the shadows was mentally exhausting, and always looking over your shoulder. And then you can never really connect with the rest of the world because you hear about their problems and their situations, and you're just like, man, if that's all I had to worry about, these first world problems, man, life would be good. But I had third world problems still living in a first world country.
Yeah.
So it also made it harder to connect with others, harder to empathize with the things they have going on in their lives.
So just day in, day out, there's this shroud of stress.
Yeah, you just never know. You're just like, this could be it, this could be it, and every day you get home, it was nice. So you were able to relax, like, got another day out of the way, you just keep moving forward.
You went to GRCC and finished the extended plan.
Yeah.
Finished your first 2 years. So you're now a graduate, you have an associate degree, and just recently transferred to Western Michigan University.
Correct.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Broncos. So what are you studying?
Organizational communication, and I hope to transition that into a master's in higher education administration, in hopes of establishing a strong education system to support those, with different circumstances like myself. Because at first I didn't have a helping hand, but once DACA got around and others institutes caught wind of it, they were able to help me. Find private scholarships, get me through where I needed to be, and I definitely want to give the same gifts that were given out to me onto others.
Sure. So for our viewers watching who don't understand DACA, are thinking that, oh, we're being flooded with immigrants taking over our country. What would you say to them?
To understand we're not here to take over the country. We believe in this country. The minute we stepped foot in it, we wouldn't have sacrificed everything we had as a family, friends, home, just to be here and make something bad out of it. It just doesn't really, I don't really understand that. We're here to do everything we can to make the country we believe in into a great one, as it already was since the minute we got here and the minute we saw it. By no means are we here to, you know, cause crime, you know, anything negative in general. We're not here to do that. We only want to be part of the United States. It's just been a dream for us since the very beginning. A lot of people say, well, why didn't you, apply for citizenship? Well, believe me, if I had the chance, I would have. But that's just not the way the system works.
A lot of the complaints are, why can't you get in line?
Yeah, exactly. There is no line. I am in a limbo. The minute, I don't want to get into all the logistics of immigration history and legislation, but just know that the first opportunity I've ever had to reach some kind of citizenship or residency was DACA. So to answer their questions, I did. And the only thing I ever could do was DACA. And that was my line. And I was hoping that line would progress into something else, but unfortunately, now it's not. And that's what we're pushing for, because we're doing everything we can to be part of this country. So we do want to be citizens and do want to be residents. We just want the opportunity.
So if there are any American families watching that would like to have an intelligent, handsome young person join their family, then maybe they can adopt you, marry you, and have you officially rolled in.
Right.
But in the meantime, I understand this is a stressful 6-month period.
It is. And it's funny that you mentioned adoption or marriage, but a lot of us, we want to earn it. The last thing we want is to fit someone's stereotype and say we took advantage of the system by trying to become part of the country. We're doing everything we can to do it legally and doing it right. And we want to earn that. That way we can establish ourselves the same way every other immigrant in the past has. And we just want that opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're pushing right now for the DREAM Act and any other kind of legislation for immigration reform, and anybody who's willing to support it.
Well, clearly you've been an asset to the Grand Rapids community for all these years, and so I wish you the best, and we'll hope that some of our legislators watching are taking note and saying, you indeed belong here. And,
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hope for that going forward.
Yeah, I hope for it too.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you, Alec. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Take care.
So thank you for joining us. If you're watching on TV, stay with us for some tips on American English, culture, and humor. For our friends on the internet, we hope you'll join our ongoing conversation with the impressive immigrants who contribute their vast skills to making the United States a better place.